Was it just a narcoleptic dream? Or was Peter looking at me? Some shots of his trunk, sitting in a shower in my mind. Telepathy, narcolepsy, on a date. Laughing and falling, frozen in sleep. Emotions down deep, REM sleep. Living like Jimmy, wear the mask of amphetamine. Cold like a turkey, down like a goat, napping like a hamster in a lavender coat. Snapping shots like a bandit, loving like an elephant, moving like a rhino, sipping like a phasmid. Quiet your mind, don't go to sleep. Hit the call of the wild, find your elephant. Listen in the silence, send pictures through your mind. Hear whispers through the static with narcoleptic magic.
You messaged me and said you had a wild narcolepsy story, and I've been kind of waiting to hear it. Can you finally share it with me?
Yes, absolutely. Well, narcolepsy is when your brain actually goes into REM during, well, for me, during times that I have extreme emotions. So it means that the very first time that I discovered I had narcolepsy was I was on a date with my now husband. And we were laughing and carrying on. It was Valentine's Day, had a couple of drinks, and I collapsed. And it was really scary. I thought I was having a stroke, and I didn't know my whole body had shut down. And it was really, really scary. And I went to the doctors, and imagine going to the doctor and saying to somebody, my symptom was I was laughing, and then I collapsed. And every time I laugh, I collapse. And so it's crazy, huh? So then the doctor said, look, I'm going to do some tests. And luckily for me, they knew kind of what to look for. So they sent me to a sleep clinic, and I did a sleep study, and they put lots of things on my brain and gave me a whole bunch of sleep tests to see if I had sleep apnea or narcolepsy. And so I had narcolepsy. It takes me 2 minutes to get into deep sleep without REM. So anytime I go to sleep, I have a superpower where I can just go to sleep anywhere, anytime, when I'm not tired, just like that.
Tell me more about the emotion side of it. If you laugh, or I guess express or feel other emotions as well, things like anger or sadness. I don't know what is sort of the scope of the scope of the limits of your emotions.
It's a really good question, because I think I've learnt over years and time that it was scary to have emotion, and that's been a really hard thing, especially because I was put on medication for probably 7 years where it was monitoring my emotions, and it actually created, I found that actually changed my personality. So I ended up stopping any medication so that I could manage it, and it's the best thing I ever did, because now I know when I'm tired, I have less and less symptoms all the time. But what happens is it's usually deep emotion. Like if something really shocking happens, or, those times when you laugh and you kind of, it's just really deep. Like it comes from somewhere, and those belly laughs that you sometimes get when you're on the floor, or you're just like you can't breathe, or it's a really deep laugh. That's the kind of laughing that usually triggers it when I'm just really relaxed. Shock, also surprise. So anything that takes me by surprise or is a deep emotion, usually will trigger it. Even now, a comedian, for example, if I watch a comedian, the brain goes into, it's something happens to the brain, and then I can, my left side always just, it's like I want to go to sleep. So.
And even if you initiate this, say like if you be funny, if you're making jokes, you're playing around, would that also ignite something, or is that different?
Sometimes I can feel it, and I guess I've learned over the last over 20 years that I've really grown to just stop it. So I have my emotions. That's why I feel that my emotions aren't as animated as they used to be, which is quite sad, especially. So I feel like I've kind of dulled my emotions so that I know where my limits are because I don't want to collapse.
I've read that people with narcolepsy often they have more REM sleep. Of course, you've mentioned that you can slip into REM sleep very quickly, and the research says that it's like REM kind of enters their wakefulness and is sort of bleeding into through their sleep, but also into their waking life, and it's almost like there's more dreaming and while sleeping, but also I guess you can say dreaming while awake, or at the boundaries between wakefulness and sleep. Have you experienced any of that?
Look, I've had all kinds of things. I've had, when there's a time where you're asleep and your whole body is completely frozen, like it's in paralysis. I've had sleep paralysis where it's really scary, which is part of this as well, where you're asleep, you wake up from a very vivid dream and you wake up and it's like a scene in the Matrix where your mouth is completely grown over and you can't speak, you can't move your arms and you can't even reach out to the person next to you to say, "Oh my God, I don't know what's going on." And you're just completely frozen. It's like you're suddenly awake. You want to move, but you can't. And it's a really bizarre feeling. And I think narcolepsy, there's a lot of people that have really bad narcolepsy where they can't drive a car, they collapse, or they just fall asleep like this, like talking to you, they might just fall asleep. And you'll see also there's goats. There's some famous YouTube videos. If you search up goats, collapsing goats, you'll see there's these crazy goats that run around a paddock and they get really excited and they collapse. So, and that makes me laugh. And then of course it's then I want to collapse. So it's very funny. But yeah, look, it's a very I've learned to see the lighter side and I see it more of as a superpower now because it's a part of my brain and it is it's unlocked a certain creativity and I live my life as a creative person. So I think narcolepsy has just allowed me to create my own business on my terms so I can have naps when I want to. And I only usually have a couple of naps a day. But I do have very vivid dreams and creativity, and my brain does go in all kinds of places, as I'm sure everyone's does.
Okay, so the superpowers are one, you can fall asleep when you want. Two, maybe more importantly, is through that or with or without that, it's sort of a way to unlock this creativity and imagination. But maybe you can explain more about the superpowers of your narcolepsy.
Yeah, look, I think the superpowers are I find that napping is a really underplayed thing. Do you nap? Do you have a nap during the day? Because I do. I think sleeping is really underrated because especially today's culture where you're in front of the screen, you're always working. There's so many pressures outside. And I feel that with my narcolepsy, it's almost like, especially if you're out or if I'm if I'm somewhere and I need to go to sleep really quickly, it's just no problem for me. I just seem to put my head down on the pillow, and before I even count to five, I can't read a book or I'm just asleep. Anytime I just lie down or sit down. Now, watching TV, I find that sometimes if I'm watching Netflix, if I do really not want to go to sleep, I will put my laptop on. So I'm doing two things at once to counteract the want to go to sleep. Other times I just will go to sleep because it is like a superpower and recharges me within about 20 minutes. So,
And for the average person, we kind of go through these stages of sleep. In the earlier part of the night, you have more deep sleep, and the REM kind of pops in more towards the morning. And the more you sleep in through the morning, you get this REM sleep. But I imagine maybe your brain's a little bit different. Where does REM and specifically dreaming come into your life?
look, I think with dreaming, it's interesting because I go into deep sleep really quickly and I don't know all the scientific, jargon. I've looked at it and I'm like, yep, okay. But I know from myself, because in the studies that have been done, my brain goes straight into deep sleep and then I kind of come out of it later. So whereas most people go into that dream state before they go to deep sleep, I hit straight into deep sleep and then I will come back out over, the period of the night. So I guess where most people will dream, yeah, at that early evening stage where before they drift off, I'm just like crash. Like I am completely just there. And so meditation can be quite hard because I go into sleep and a lot of people don't understand meditation teachers. I'm about to try transcendental meditation to see if I can stay, because one of the sleep tests that they gave me was, I want you to sit in a room for 20 minutes and not do anything and not fall asleep. And I'm like, so you want me to sit in a really comfortable armchair in a completely plain room and not sleep? And I didn't last very long. I failed that test dismally.
Yeah, or these, there's like a yoga nidra or these like shamanic journey meditations or any kind of guided meditation where they're like, you're in a forest and there's the clouds and the birds are flying and like really relaxing scenes. I wonder how you would react to that. Even I kind of fall asleep.
Well, I can do those, but I do go into sleep. And that's why I wonder how relaxed I get if I get super relaxed. So I haven't done any brain studies for a long time, but when I did have a lot of studies done, it was just very, very fast. And even when I was not tired or anything. And I think narcolepsy, there's a lot more people having narcolepsy. And I believe it may have stemmed from having shift work, because very early in my 20s, I used to do a lot of shift work where I would work all night and then I would work in television stations, putting commercials to air all crazy hours, no sleep, really didn't treat myself well. And so that imbalance of different shift work and circadian rhythms and things, I really feel like that might have mucked my system up, which is probably after that period is when it happened.
That's interesting. I never thought about it. Like maybe narcolepsy is like a way for the brain and body to adapt to things like shift work.
Yeah, well, that's my own philosophy. I don't know.
And then if it is increasing, then that could explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people I've spoken to in narcolepsy groups and things, some of them have had shift work and really struggled. So it's interesting. It's just my own philosophy, but that's where I think perhaps for me, the stress, the different hours, and all of that kind of stuff mucked with my brain.
And then one day you had this vision or image or experience of this elephant taking a selfie, and that kind of redirected your life. Talk about that moment, and then I guess what followed it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think one of the things when I was on narcolepsy medication, I was on quite it was a dexamphetamine, which was like having speed, I guess, to keep awake. And it really wasn't good. I really found that it changed my personality. It heightened all of my senses. So I could hear conversations happening in a different room or like a block away. I'd hear alarms before they'd go off and tell people that there were just these superpowers that I seemed to have: heightened senses, heightened intuition. Everything seemed to be heightened. And although that was good, it also changed my personality and I became very anxious, very kind of hypertense person from being on that kind of medication, which is not very good. So I'm so glad that I just decided to go cold turkey. Now, during that time, I found myself just going through a real meltdown of 'cause I had a video production business in Sydney, Australia, and I found that I was just burning out. I was burning the candle again because I was awake all the time from this medication. It was like, yeah, I can work all the time. I can do what I want and I'm losing weight and I'm awesome. I can hear everything. And I just, it was like I wore the mask, the movie The Mask. It was kind of like that. And of course, you come tumbling down when you can't sustain that kind of life. And so I really stopped and I stopped doing everything. I stopped working and I really took a break. And that's when I asked the question, what would it take to do something I really love and make a difference in the world? And I really just kept asking that question every single day for a week. What would it take for an idea to come to me that I can make a difference and use my skills? And so this image came into my mind in the shower very vividly of an elephant taking a selfie. Now, this is a random image. And I stopped and I thought, I have never seen, didn't know anything about elephants, didn't know anything about them taking pictures. So it was a very random thought. Now, I had just started learning about animal communication, which is about telepathy with animals. And I started to go to classes and read books, and I understood that there was such a thing as animal communication. But I was still very skeptical. And I guess that image that popped into my mind, I just started to ask the question, like, what if an elephant is trying to communicate with me? What if there's something out there bigger than me? And I just started to suddenly feel more excited than ever about video, about production, about my life and what I could possibly do to go and find this elephant. So I started to investigate. I talked to my husband. I told him about the vision, and he luckily is very supportive of my crazy ideas. And I decided to go off and travel the world to go and find out where this elephant was that may have sent me the message. And so off I went. And as crazy as that sounds, the very first place I went, which was Thailand, the elephant that I met, the first elephant, Peter, he actually had just finished filming a Samsung ad with exactly the image that I saw in the shower. So I don't know if that was coincidence or what, and I've never seen an elephant do that since. So it was really interesting because I really thought, wow, is this the elephant? And I questioned it and was skeptical. It was a journey that took me many years around the world.
Yeah, I'm tempted to try to figure it out too. Then you threw in the Samsung piece now, like, ooh, that adds an extra layer. I was thinking maybe because with narcolepsy, features of REM sleep can kind of bleed into our waking life. Things like sleep paralysis, but also dreaming and creativity and symbology and all these different things. Maybe that was like a weird, mild narcoleptic event or something, or maybe just your creative powers were heightened and symbology increased as it do when we're sleeping and when we're in REM sleep in our bed. But I guess you were in your shower. Is there any way to tie this event, this elephant event, together with narcolepsy, or was it just you, a human meditating and figuring something out?
Look, I've always, as a child, really connected to nature, and I've always felt like I could talk to animals when I was little. I always had these amazing friendships with animals, and I'd walk around and I'd go and save any animal that I could. And so I really did have a connection with nature, but I lost it. And I really felt like I lost it for a long time. And I certainly didn't know anything about elephants. So when I actually did learn about animal communication and put it to the test and realized that there is a thing that you can communicate with animals, and it absolutely works, because it's when you do quieten the mind and you empty the mind, that's when you can hear the messages. And unfortunately, because of today's society, we are so busy. There is this monkey mind. There is so much chatter going on in your mind that you can't hear the messages because you've got so much going on in your brain. So it's a very important practice to just to start to calm that mind so you can hear messages from animals or visions. And at that moment, I think that I kept asking the question. And what I've learned over the years is if you ask a question, you will always get the answer. And that was a question for myself, like what will show up that can change my life? I went off on my own to make a documentary by myself. When I usually have crews, I didn't know what I was in for. And it took me all around the world meeting incredible people to go and listen to messages from elephants. So I just think that whatever it is, there is so much we don't know, and there is so much untapped potential in everything. And if I got a little heightened piece of that I tuned into for a moment, and then just it sat with me, something else was driving me that I can't explain. Because what drives someone to pack up their gear after one thought or one crazy idea and follow that thought and go and find out to see if that it exists? Not many people would do that. So I think there's something else that was driving me besides just that vision.
And whether the vision was connected to reality, it is now. Whether it was real or is this your imagination? Somehow it incited this action in you, and then that now it's real. Maybe it was real the whole time, but that's interesting. The whole connection between imagination and reality.
Well, we do everything around us. If we look at the room, everything was imagined first.
How do the animals communicate with us? I'm trying to imagine it myself, but yeah, how do they communicate with us?
Well, animals are interesting. There was an experience in Africa that I'll never forget, and it was with a rhino, and it was very unexpected because I was there to go and meet elephants, and so I was really trying, and I'm like, why aren't I getting messages? Come on, like what's going on? Maybe I can't do this. And what happens when you do receive a message, or we send pictures, so pictures mind to mind. So what I find, especially say we have 2 cats at home, and if we go away or we leave them in a cattery or something, we always send them pictures of the sun going up and down. We don't send them pictures of clocks because they don't know what time is. We send them, okay, there's going to be 3 sun up and downs and we'll be back and we'll come and get you. So in our mind, I'm sending pictures of the sun going up and down to our cats. And I'll just be imagining that and thinking of them and connecting to them by thinking of them and sending them those images. And there's a lot of tests done by Rupert Sheldrake. He's actually in my documentary. He's done a lot of studies with telepathy, and you'll see if you check out his website, he's a scientist. So he's got a lot of scientific backing around what telepathy is and how it actually works with animals. And he's done a lot of studies around dogs and how dogs and their owners, how they read owners when you're away, and how they respond at home when there's nothing for them to see, but they can tune into you.
Okay, interesting. It's sort of this remote communication, or seemingly remote. I guess there's some we're more connected than we realize, but I don't know anything about telepathy. And at first, I was imagining like you were meeting these animals face to face, and you were connecting, yeah, in the way that we connect with our dogs or something. Is that also part of it? Do you meet these animals, and how do you connect when you're face to face?
So, say for example, for like an animal communication story with the rhino. So we went to this place. The rhinos had to be moved and these are giant rhinos in a park, semi-wild, and they had to be moved from the front gate of the safari place because they were delivering a new rhino to the park. And so the rhinos had to be moved. So we were in the cars with all the people, and we were driving around trying to wrangle a rhino with some food away and so the rhinos are running after the car. Now, the rhinos knew something was going on, and there is no way in hell that they were going to move away from that gate. And after a few hours and a lot of stress that the people in the cars were having, they're like, this is not working. We can't get these rhinos away from the gate. And I said to them, look, and there's guys with guns, there's kind of like, security and all these people in the car. And I said, are you willing to try something with me? And they're like, okay. And I said, okay, so tell me, where are we going? Tell me a picture where are we taking the rhinos? I don't know where we're going. So he described an airfield about 5 kilometers away that we were going to take the rhinos. And he described the picture. And I said, okay, that's the picture of where we're going. Right now, all of us are thinking about where we don't want them to be. We're thinking and we're focusing on the picture of the gate, and we don't want them to go there, but we're not thinking about this is where we want to take you. This is why. So we all just sat there for a moment and started to think about the airfield and the 5 kilometers and this is why. And within, I would say, 10 minutes, he was following us to the new place.
I want to talk more about emotions, and I think this does connect with animals because they are quite emotional creatures. You said you had to kind of learn to suppress your emotions or feel them less, just as a way to be safe, basically, and not collapse, etc. Survival adaptation or whatever. But at the same time, you're making these films, these documentaries. It's a very creative thing. You're with these animals or these very emotional creatures, especially elephants. They're quite expressive. I'm kind of wondering. I have like a theory or something about maybe these animals and these films are like a backdoor into emotional connectivity or expression or something, or maybe they're a result of the fact that you're in more REM sleep, and in REM sleep also we're doing this emotional processing. That itself is sort of a backdoor into emotion expression, and we're not expressing it through our body, but we're expressing it through our imagination. Yeah, have you thought about it yourself, like the connection between your kind of suppression of emotions and then you're at the same time you're engaging, you're pursuing these animals that are not suppressing their emotions. They're a lot of times showing them, especially that, dogs and elephants, and I don't know about rhinoceroses, probably. And then the filmmaking, I mean, you have to kind of release emotion somehow there, maybe not through your body and laughter and screaming, but through your, I guess again, through your imagination and with the camera or something.
With animals, I've just got a sixth sense. And one of my very dear friends, he was David Attenborough's cinematographer for 30 years. He passed away a couple of years ago, and we're creating a feature film actually called Symphony of the Earth for his legacy. And he invented a whole bunch of cameras that Hollywood use now. And now the technology's moved a little bit. But that whole thing about being able to express yourself with emotions, one of my favorite things that just make me the happiest is creating beautiful things through the camera and through storytelling and through motion design. And maybe it is a form of self-expression through that, because maybe the emotions that I don't express in my everyday life, I express through the screen, or I express through other ways of being able to find other emotions in people. And I think one of my other superpowers is, because I am quite an introvert, I do tend to listen a lot, and I feel into, very self-aware of my surroundings. So I tend to, heighten in areas that I lack, if that makes sense.
That also explains why you're able to communicate with the animals too, because you really have to listen to hear them. And I guess you don't have to listen that hard, but listen more than the average person in modern society does.
And I think I think it's a missing piece in society that, animals, including insects, I've had incredible experiences with insects as well. When you stop and you watch and you're not trying to do something, but you're just being with that being and learning about its ways. And it's just incredible. I think we've lost that touch, or we've lost touch with that natural world. And in Japan, I know I've been to some of those animal cafes where there's just so many people, and like, you don't have this sense of just being with the animal and how it feels in that surroundings and working. And that's what I found with my documentary. It's about learning another way to communicate, that we can both work together to get the outcome. Working together with an animal and an animal communicator is a really special experience.
So what are some of the animals that you've been being with? I guess elephants are one of the big ones. You mentioned rhinoceros. You mentioned insects. What are some of the others? And you've sort of seen sides of all these animals that we haven't seen or we haven't been listening to. So what are some just interesting things you've learned about elephants and or rhinoceroses or insects or any of these things through this process?
Look, I think that there is so much that animals can teach us, and especially the elephant is so much family. There's so much we can learn from the elephant. They have 20,000 muscles in their trunk. They can absolutely do anything that they want to do. They could absolutely take a photo. There's no question. I think also the deep intelligence and emotional, they have so much emotion. They grieve. I've watched elephants grieve for their lost loved one that was dying. The babies, the way that they've got nannies in their herd, they work together. So there's so much we can learn from elephants as a whole. They absolutely work together. And look, all animals like rhinoceroses. When we went to Africa and stayed and spent some time with rhinos, they're like big puppy dogs. They really are. And they have such a love and emotion. And I just find that everything does. Like, even, do you know what a praying mantis is, or a phasmid?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, those are great. I think we all loved them as kids. I mean, I certainly did.
Yeah, and there's these things called phasmids, which are like the stick insect version. We had 2 of them as pets just roaming around on some tree branches inside the house, and I remember hand feeding them water droplets, and they would come rushing over to me, and I would be feeding them water droplets. So they knew that they knew when I was coming, they'd come over. So it's just exactly the same. It's that behavior. It's just giving them the time and space and watching them and observing them. I think that's what I would say, that with any animal, there is so much beauty in the world that gets forgotten, and we're annihilating nature at the speed of light, and it's not going to be there. Like so many animals are becoming extinct. I think it's really important that we try everything we can to create habitats in our houses or working alongside animals without being separate.
And these might also be ways for us to kind of heal our minds and calm ourselves down a little bit too. Like you mentioned, when you're on the meds and stuff, and you're a bit maybe disconnected, you're running around like the mask, which is fun. You can get things done, and maybe you're interesting. Your life is interesting in some ways, but it's very stressful and not healthy. And you're gonna explode at some point or crash down. And then now you're connected to these animals. Yeah, you've got narcolepsy, but there's people with all kinds of different things, like bipolar disorder and ADHD, and or just basic stress of modern life. Connected with animals, like when you mentioned that praying mantis, feeding it water droplets, or I guess his praying mantis is a little cousin or something. But that's a very calming experience. Being there with the elephants, that'll calm anyone down. You would think. So yeah, this is a kind of cool little medicine. Getting back connected to nature and specifically to animals might be a great way to sort of calm down our brains and get us less mask-like. Though I do like the mask. I do love Jim Carrey, but that's not how I want to live.
Yeah. And you're right. It's so important. And I really feel that, with the rise of robots and AI and so much more disconnection, it's so important than ever that we have the balance of nature. And even going outside, it's impossible to walk through a forest and be stressed at the same time. When you can walk through and be present to the trees and breathe in the air and just the wonder around you, that's impossible to feel that stress at the same time as doing that, I believe.
Now, I've got this dog now for the first time in my life, and before the interview, I'd kind of making some eye contact, just say, "Hey," just looking at each other. I do that all the time, and the dog will always entertain me, just like be there with me, and just like look into each other's eyes gently. So like, whoa, it's like that praying mantis, but it's something deeper. Now we got the eyes. I mean, you're a filmmaker, so you use a camera. That's a kind of lens. The eyes are also kind of a camera-like object. Yeah, what are your thoughts about eyes, specifically animal eyes? I know this is a kind of a curveball, but I imagine you might have thought something about it.
Well, it's interesting because the documentary that I'm making is through elephanteyes.com, and it's got the trailer and everything, and I do believe that eyes are the window to the soul, but also it can be seen as a threat, especially with chimpanzees. A lot of animals, if you stare at them or you look at them too much, whenever I approach like a kangaroo, for example, I see kangaroos on my morning walk. If I walk over, I'll always look down, or I'll be really quiet and crouch down so that I don't seem intimidating. And especially with birds, or we've done a lot of wildlife rescue, always crouch down. I always want to seem like I'm unassuming so that I can then take gentle steps forward, because most people rush over and let me grab that. But it's like, no, let's just take our time and be not threatening.
And even dogs who don't feel safe with us, say they don't know us, walking down the street, a stranger's dog too, you probably don't want to be like looking into its eyes or whatever.
Imagine someone coming up to you in the street and just going, right, I'm going to pat your hair and I'm going to stare at you. I mean, how would you feel?
Well, I was in in Arashiyama in Kyoto. There's this like monkey park thing. I went there. Luckily, there's a cage between us. But I think I made a friendly gesture to the monkey, and he did not receive it that way, and he just turned into pure raw hellish beast demon mode, and I was like, oh my god, I connected to the raw reality of life. I'm about to die. Like his eyes, man, the monkey, those monkey's eyes, like sketch into my skull. his eyes got all demonic and stuff, and he showed me his teeth, and I'm like, my whole body was like, you would definitely would have collapsed at that point. I almost did.
There's an amazing book, if you haven't read it, The Elephant Whisperer, Lawrence Anthony. I've done a bit about him in my doco. He actually rescued a herd of wild elephants, and he had one incident where this particular elephant was running towards him, and he decided to be still. Like imagine an elephant charging you, a wild, like African elephant, and choosing to stand still, like to be strong in who you are and not run the other way. And from that moment, because she stopped right in front of him, and they had this moment of connection, and it was never the same. It was always amazing from that point. So he stood his ground, and but that would have taken a lot of courage to just, and apparently it did. Speaking to his wife, it was very scary, but that was just something in him saying, "Do not run."
Yeah, no, that's also something that could teach us something about human to human communication too. When you're telling me that story, a memory from this winter, I went back home, and saw my brother. He's bipolar. He's homeless. He's been homeless for the past 3 years or so. So obviously very stressed out, very sensitive, and suffering a lot. But there's this one moment where I mentioned something about his beard or something, because he'd be like rubbing his beard, and he said something like "stupid beard" or whatever, and I'm like, "Oh, you don't like it?" Normally his voice is like almost non-existent because he's not using it. He's like off alone in the forest or whatever. But then suddenly his voice just erupted like that monkey's face, and just wah, and he got up in my face, but there was no cage between us this time. But I just stood there. I didn't fight back. I was just there, and he calmed down. So I guess my point is, when people are kind of attacking us, maybe running at us like an elephant, maybe we just sort of stand our ground and just be there, and the animal inside them kind of calms down and, okay, whatever, rather than fighting back. Kind of common sense, but at the same time, like when you experience these moments, you're like, whoa, yeah, my brother was that angry elephant. But then he calmed down, and we're hey, love you, see you tomorrow. Anyways, time to go. It looks like basically, if people want to learn more, connect with you, it shouldn't be that hard. Just Google your name, but maybe you can throw some links or something.
Sure. Look, I'm not hard to find. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Rachel Dunn, or even through elephanteyes.com or whatever. Just reach out. You'll find me.
Yeah, is documentary out yet, or is it still in progress?
Look, it's been a 10-year journey, and we've rescued this amazing elephant in Africa. It's taken 4 years to actually help rescue him, so it's been a very big ordeal. You'll have to watch the documentary for the rest of the story.